Hi everyone, welcome to chapter 4. Today we're going to start from Substance and we are ready for texturing, starting from a blank project. I'm taking for granted, even though everything we're going to do inside here is pretty beginner stuff, but I'm expecting you to know at least the principle of the PBR workflow and how the system like Substance works. So basic stuff about layering, blend modes, and this kind of stuff. So starting from an empty Substance project, let's create a new one. And we want to set the document resolution to 4K and select the geometry for the stick. So stick underscore geo. For the template, this will be fine. This is the default one. Change the normal map format to OpenGL. And we don't have camera, but we can leave this as it is. We don't want to auto unwrap. Now, regarding for the color management, I'm not entirely sure about this because in theory, you should set this to OpenColor.io and choose the correct ACES profile, provided that you are working with ACES in Houdini. But I honestly, with neither of this configuration file I tried a bunch of them. I'm not having a match in colors between Substance and Houdini. The only way I could have the same color in after the export is by leaving this to OpenColor.io, but change this to Substance. And now I will have a match between the color. I'm not sure why it's like this because in theory, if you set this configuration file to the same configuration file is set in Houdini, they should match. But in my case, they don't. So I need to set it like this. So we want to press OK. Everything else should be fine. And now we have the stick geometry inside Substance. So right away, as you can see, we have just one texture set. It comes with the name of default material. So let's call it stick. And let's save the project right away. So I will go to my folder, which is right here, and I will create this stick project. Now we want to bake the mesh map, and in Substance you can tumble it around with the Alt key and your mouse button. So now on the texture setting panel, we want to scroll down to bake mesh map. Here we want to change the output size to 4K, so it will match the document resolution. And for the map, we don't need the ID one, and we don't need the thickness. So we are computing normal, world space normal, ambient occlusion, curvature, and position. And I'm never sure if this needs to be on whenever you're using a high poly mesh by default, but let's turn it on for a good measure. And click to bake selected texture. Let him do his job for a few seconds. And now here you can scroll to see the different mesh map. Here you can disable the view for the wireframe and the surface, so we can inspect, let's say, the curvature. And they seems fine, so we want to return to painting mode. Here you can press basically M to switch to the material view, and you can also inspect the single channel and also the mesh map from here if you want. Then go back to the layers. By default, an empty layer has been created. Let's delete it right away and start to create our textures. So this stick should be wood, right? So let's create a fill layer. This will be our base values. And we will use just the color, height, and roughness channel for this texture. So let's disable metal, normal, opacity, and emission. We will use some normal for the rendering, but Substance basically works with height. Then it will convert eventually to a normal map. But this normal channel you see in Substance usually is used when you have also an incoming normal map. So we are going to work with height for the detail, even if we are not going to use a true displacement inside Houdini. So for the color, let's choose something like this, which could be a good base for a wood material. And for the roughness, you can rotate the light with the shift button and the right click of the mouse. So let's say we want a starting roughness of something like this. So let's start to introduce some variation to this material. And the way I like to work in Substance is by layering down multiple fill layers and mask those layers. So we want to create another fill layer, and for now let's make it red so it will be more noticeable. And we want to operate on the same channel, so disable these four guys. And basically now we want to create a mask to show and hide some part of this other layer. So we want to right click on the layer and add a black mask. So we will start with hiding everything. And now with the mask selected, you can click here to add an effect to the mask. The effect we're going to choose, it will based on the need of the moment. For now, let's add a fill effect. This right off the bat will add just a black and white slider. So black we are hiding the layer and white we are showing it. What we are going to do is to use an image to drive this grayscale value. So I want to go on window to enable my asset panel, and I don't like it at the top. Let's put it here at the bottom. And I'm on the folder called texture, where you can find all the pattern and the noise. And let's see, I want to add to start this directional noise 4. So I want to take it and drag it on the grayscale value. And basically we are using now this texture to drive this mask. Now, you can already see that we have a major problem here, where the seams are, and also the pattern is flipped. If you click here, you can choose to see the 3D viewport, which is the current one, the 2D only, or 3D and 2D. So let's enable this one. And here we have the UV spaces. Right now, you can see that we have the setting here for the UV projection. This is set to use the UV projection itself. So basically this image of the noise is being projected as a plane on here. And so where we have the seams and where we have a different orientation, of course, this will cause a problem. So we want to use the triplanar projection, which is basically a way to use multiple planes and blend them together to have some sort of seamless effect. So as you can see, we immediately fixed the seam issue. Now we just need to rotate this texture, so 90 degrees, because we want to make it vertical. And here we have all the parameters to control the noise itself. So let's say we want to add some more contrast, so it will be more noticeable. And we can also increase the noise scale, something like 2 will be fine. And we are acting on all three channels. If you click on the layer, you will see that we have the channels back. And now we are seeing only the change in the color because we are not changing the height, and here basically the value should be 0.33, 0.3. There's not much different, but let's reposition the light. Something like this. If we start to decrease the roughness, you see that there's something happening. And this will become even more noticeable if you start to increase the height. Basically, the mask we created is driving these new values. So for this layer, let's say for the color, we want something similar to before, but lighter. Let's say something like this. And for the height, for now, we want just a small change, maybe in the negative value. So let's set it to 0, or rather 0.03. And for the roughness, let's not make this change so big. So it was 0.33. Let's make it 0.4. So this is just a light variation to start off. So as you may notice, basically Substance is like somewhat like a 3D version of Photoshop. You also have the blend mode for the layer, the opacity value, and this is relative to a single channel. As you can see here, this is the base color. If you switch to height, basically each channel does have some different blend mode. The height, for example, by default is set to set itself as a linear dodge, I believe. Yeah. And same for the roughness. And we will leave everything as it is for now. Maybe we will change something in the next layer, but let's say it's fine as it is for now. Now we want to add another layer, and rather than creating the layer, the mask, and so on, let's just Ctrl C and Ctrl V this one, so we have a copy right away. And let's set to see only the 3D viewport now. So we have a copy which is exactly like the layer before. And also, if you Alt and click, you will see the overlay for that mask instead of the result. As you can see right here, it says mask now, not material. Now, for this other one, we want to change the type of noise. So let's make some room in the asset window, and let's see. We want to use these directional scratches now. So let's simply replace the noise here and put this guy back here again. And now we have a different noise. As you can see here, we still have triplanar because this setting up here belongs to the fill layer, not on the image properties. And on this noise parameter, let's increase the scale even further. So we have something like this. And maybe leave everything as it is for now for the rest. So press M, we will see the material again, but we want to change this value now. So for the color, let's pick something darker, something like this. And this time we want to raise the height a little bit. So let's set it to 0.01. These are really, let's say, micro scratches. And also increase the roughness, something like this, 0.54 something. So we added another layer of variation, and that's basically the core concept of texturing, is add variation until you have a believable material. And as you can see, the color is set to normal, so basically each layer is covering the layer below them, but by all means, if you want to achieve another effect. But as you may notice, since the height, let's say, is not set to normal, we are not replacing the height like we are doing with the colors. So if you want to replace the height channel, let's say this should be our new height entirely, you want to replace this with replace mode. This will basically annihilate all the height coming from below, but we don't want to set it like that. Let's reset it to L-edge, which is linear dodge. So go back on the base color and let's add another layer. So Ctrl C and Ctrl V. On this one, before we change the noise, let's tweak also the color a little bit, some slight variation like this, and also let's tweak a little bit the height, not 0.01 but 0.008, very small change, and also increase the roughness by a little bit. We are doing very small change because we are working on a very small object. This is basically the stick of an ice cream, but they will be noticeable at the end. And for the noise, let's display it so we can see the noise alone. This time, let's use this anisotropic one. So let's replace it. And for the setting, I want to crank up this value, and this is not enough, so we want to increase the tiling also. something like 8 or 9 should be fine in this case. I want really micro details on this one. And let's leave everything else as it is. So now if we display it, basically we introduced even more variation compared to what we had before. And keep in mind that what we're doing here is really the bare minimum. In a really complex material, you can find a fill layer with 5, 6, or maybe more of this guy stuck together, because you can have as many effects as you want on a single mask. You can change the blend mode, you can change the opacity, so you can imagine the complexity a single layer could reach. But again, this is a simple material. And if you want to have some sort of preview in rendering, you can change here the mode to rendering. This will use the Substance rendering engine. And as you can see, we have some sort of GPU preview. Here you can also change the environment. So let's say we want to use another environment map. We can choose between the ones that come pre-installed with Substance. So let's say this Atelier. And you have controls also on the exposure, on the rotation. There's also some post effect, camera setting, but this is only for previewing here. This will be not tied to the texture export. So let's go back on the painting mode and let's add a final layer to this base wood. So let's duplicate this layer one more time. And this time I want to use this layer to drive some deeper scratch. So let's tweak the color to something darker, something like this. And this time we want to decrease the height for a good amount. So let's say something like this, negative 0.05. So we have some deep scratch. And also decrease the roughness, something like 0.35. And now I like the effect of these deeper scratches, but they are too much. So first I want to change the noise. I don't want to use this anisotropic one. I want to take the, where it was, the directional scratch again. So replace it. And on the noise parameter, let's decrease the balance until we have something like this. So if we press M, already here we have a less amount of scratches, but they are everywhere. So now we want to apply what I was talking before, layering multiple effects on top of each other. So with this effect selected, or at least the mask selected, on the effect tab, let's add another fill. And right now, as you can see, the mode is set to normal. If we set it to black, we are basically hiding the effect below. What we want to do is to change this to multiply. So now we can use this with another image to hide some part of the previous scratches. And let's say for this effect, we want to use the clouds tree. So place it here. And if you alt and click, change the mode from normal, you see the clouds, multiply, we see the scratches, but the black part of the clouds are covering some of the scratches. So on this one, also we want to set it as a triplanar, so we don't have the seam issue. And maybe it's good as it is. Let's try to hide and show. You can see how the clouds are hiding the scratches. So I will say this is fine for now. So we have the base of our material. If you click on the layer icon itself, you will close all the subtab. So now we want to create a group so we can organize this guy. Let's call this new folder base. And we want to drag all the layers in here. So this is the base of our wood. Now we want to apply the logo carving effect on the wood. I will use my logo. It's a regular black and white PNG, but this is my logo. I don't want to give it to you, so please use another image. And the way you want to import this image is by click on the plus icon in the asset window. You want to add resources. So you need to point it where your image is located. In my case, it's in the texture folder of the Houdini project. So select it, and here you can define how you want to import your custom resource. In this case, I want to add it only in my project. I don't want this resource to be visible in all my Substance project or only in this current session. So I will add it to the project. And here you can define some prefix that you can use whenever you are looking through this search button. So let's give it some, basically a tag called logo, and it's an alpha. So import it. And as you can see, it also applied the alpha tag. So now if we filter with logo, we have the alpha we wanted to import. So now let's create the layer that will use this alpha to drive the carving effect. So add another fill layer. This will go outside the group and on top, something like this. And let's disable the channels we don't need. As usual, add a black mask, add a fill. And on this fill, we don't want to drag a noise, we want to drag the alpha. And as you can see, of course, if we visualize also the UV space, the image is here. We just need to align it properly according to our UV coordinates. And we have these handles here. So if we shift and drag the rotation, we can align and scale it proportionately and place it where we need. Right now, as you can see, the tiling is set to repeat. So set it to none. We just need one logo. And where is it? There it is. Let's rotate the light. We want, yeah, something like that. I would say it's fine. Now the only thing is, let's also disable the color and the roughness. Just use the height to see what's happening right now. And we want to decrease it because we want to carve it. So let's say we want the height of the curve something like this. What I don't like right now is too neat as an effect. So I will go after the fill. I want to add some other things. And in this case, I want to add a filter. You have also filters in Substance. So click on the filter. You will see all the available filters here. And I want to use a warp node. This will basically distort the what's below, in this case the alpha. You can control the intensity and let's set it to some lower value, something like 0.02. You also can control the intensity divider here. Right now it's set to 10. Let's see, maybe we can blur it here already. Something like 0.59. And maybe we can increase the tile of the warping effect, or rather decrease it, something like this. And on top of this filter, we want to add another one. So again, filter. And this time we want to choose a blur node. And this is way too much. Let's set it to 0.08, a very slight blur effect. But this is much better compared to what we had before. So this is the layering I was talking before. Now the problem is I want to add another layer to this logo, but I don't want to recreate all this chain in the mask, and neither I want to cut and paste it every time I need to apply something to this mask. So either here we use something which is called an anchor, but there's an easier way. This time we can simply create a new group, and we want this mask, all this mask chain, to be applied to this group instead of the layer. So you want to right click on the mask and say, where is it? Copy mask. And then on the group, we want to add a black mask and then paste into mask. This will copy the effect we created here, so we can remove it from the layer with remove mask, and this should be in the group already. Now it is. So now we have the same effect, but now if we add another fill layer on top of it, this will also be affected by the mask. So now on this new layer, let's say we want to use it to tweak just the roughness. So disable everything else. And let's say we have something like this. So the roughness is changing. For the color, we want to create another group because if this is carved with, fire, the color, which is the burn part, shouldn't match perfectly to the carving effect. They should be spread a little more, maybe not this evenly. But first, let's add a mask to this layer of roughness, because right now, as I was saying before, if we go on the roughness channel, you can see that this value here, this value of roughness, is overriding all the roughness below, because in the roughness mode of the layers here, all the roughness channel are set to normal. So in theory, what will be correct is to define a new vertical noise for the roughness, because technically this is carved, so the fibers below should be different than the surface one, but what the fuck. So let's just simply add fill layer, and or rather a black mask to this top layer, and here we want to add a fill layer. So if we take some noise like this BMW spot 3 and drag it here, display the roughness channel. Now basically this is always in normal mode, but only the values, the bright values from this mask are passing, which is using this BMW spot 3. And maybe let's tweak it a little bit. We can increase the scale to something like 5. Maybe a tiny bit on the contrast, rather the balance. And if you press M, you can see that this new value of roughness is not on everything on the logo. So let's close this folder. Substance folder, structure isn't quite clear when some layer is in the folder because they are not indented, but if you close it, everything which is inside disappears. So this is how you can tell clearly if a layer is in a folder or not. So let's rename this group to logo just height, even if we are using also for the roughness, but don't write too long names. And Control C and duplicate all the folder. And also now you see the stack of effect of the mask, because the mask is selected. If you click on the layer itself, also this stack will be hidden. This other one, we will call this logo color. We will use it for color, and we want to open the group. Let's hide this second layer for now. And on the first layer, let's enable the color, disable the height, otherwise we will double the carving effect. And for the color, let's choose some darker brown, something like this. And let's see, if we increase the roughness, this should override everything below. So we don't want to override the roughness for now on this layer. And the entire reason we duplicated this group is because we want to change some value on the mask parameters. So we want to delete the blur and the warp effect. And as you can see now, the color is different from the group which is handling the carving. And after the fill, now we want to add another filter. We want to use a bevel. And on the bevel node, let's start to slightly increase the value. Let's set it to 0.0125. And after the bevel, we want to add another filter, a blur slope. which is here. So here, basically, we can distort the incoming mask effect with some noises. We will use the default one, which is good. We just want to decrease the intensity to a lower value, let's say 0.003, a very light distortion, something like this. And we want to set the mode to max because by default, basically after the bevel, the blur slope will blur both the outside and the inside. We want to push out this mask, so we want to set the mode to max, which will put only the outer border on the distortion. So press M, and we do have something like this, which I would say it's good. So re-enable the second layer, the one we were using to tweak the roughness. And in here, let's just slightly change the value and also the noise, because right now this B and W spot is the same on the second group. So here, let's maybe offset a little bit. And also on this level, we may want to also slightly change the colors. So let's grab another value of brown. Let's say something like this. So we also have a variation on the color burn effect. And finally, on top of that, let's add another fill layer that will add us a global dirt. So add a fill layer, call it, I don't know, final rough. And here, as usual, add a black mask, and we want to disable everything but the roughness. And let's see, let's frame it where we can see the roughness difference. And on this final one, let's add a fill with, let's see, this other B&W spot too. So if we Alt and click, we can see the pattern. And let's see, set it to triplanar, because otherwise UV issue. And I would say it's fine as a dirt effect. We could play with the balance, but I will show you another filter, another effect, which is always used, which is the level. It's so used that it's a filter, but it has its own category. So add a level to it. And here, just like in Photoshop, we can tweak the histogram of our incoming noise, sorry. So if you press M, we can now tweak the roughness a little bit, so we can make it a little bit more rough. And I would say this is it for the stick geometry. We could always tweak the material in Karma itself, but before moving on with the chocolate, remember we have also the stick inside part, and we have that fake plane, so we need to create another project for the wood. But first we want to select everything here, or rather also create a folder and then drag it everything in here, and we will call this folder stick. Right click and select create smart material. This will basically create a new material in the asset window, so we can take it and replace it on the plane. As you can see, I already have the one I used on my original project. So now we need to export the texture. So save the project, file, export texture. Here we need to specify an output template for the texture. I have a Karma one, it's not built in, so I will create it right now again, so you can follow. You want to go on the output templates. We have all the templates that comes within Substance plus your custom one. We want to take there should be a redshift one somewhere here. We want to duplicate it. So here it is. Let's rename it to Karma template. And here we need to define the map we want. Basically, you can define the name with all these variable embedded in the output name, and then you will choose what substance need to take to write that map. For example, let's say the color map will be written with this information, which correspond to the base color, all with all the RGB channel plus the alpha in this case. Now, with this template in Karma, we want to export the base color, the roughness, which is fine because it's taking the roughness. The metalness is not something we will need for the stick and neither for the chocolate, so we can delete this. Otherwise, you can keep and bind it to the metallic channel coming from substance. Then we say we don't need the displacement, but let it output also the displacement. The normal, as you can see, it's a converted map. It's coming from substance, and it's not here, it's here. Right now we are taking the OpenGL, so it's fine for Karma, and we don't need an emission color, so we can delete also this one. As you can see, also the map which are supposed to take only a single channel, like the roughness and the displacement, are set to this single GR channel instead of the RGB. So this is it for the template. So back on the setting tab, here now we can choose our new template, which if you just created should be at the bottom. There it is, Karma template. And now if we select the material set, which is the stick one, you can see that we are writing color, roughness, normal, and displacement. So you just need to click to, or rather, you need to set the output folder also. So click here and choose your correct path. So in my case, I want to set it here in the texture folder, and I want to make also a subfolder. I will call it stick, and this will be my output path. So click on export. Then you can click here, it will open the folder, and here I have my texture, color, displacement, normal, and roughness. Now, back into Substance, we want to save our project, create a new one, and just like before, let's select the stick inside. This time, this is the fake plane we created in Houdini. 4K as a resolution, OpenGL. Here, the color profile should be good, and it is. So, press OK. So now here in the texture set setting, let's bake some mesh map. And also first rename the default material to stick inside. So the exported texture and baked map will take this name. So here 4K, use low polymesh as high polymesh, disable the ID, disable the thickness, and that should be it. So bake the texture. So it is done, return to painting mode, and here on the layers, let's delete the empty one and drag this smart material we created before. So drag it here, and let's delete the folder for the logo because we don't need it for the inside part. And we can leave everything else as it is. Maybe we will lighter the color a little bit inside Karma, but for now, let's export the texture. With the Karma template we created, it will export these 4 maps, and for the folder, let's point it to the right one. So in the text folder, we want to create a new one. Let's call it stick inside. The textures will go here, so export. Open the output directory, and there they are. So now you can save this project. I don't think it's really necessary, but let's right away create a new one so we can handle the chocolate. So let's create another project. This time we want to grab the chocolate geo, always 4K, OpenGL, and click OK. Let's don't save this one. So here, oh, we do have another material set for the inner part. So we need to go back to Houdini for a second. I want to delete this other texture set, and this is basically caused by a group. If we go back to our scene in the chocolate geometry, right here, if you middle click on the null, you can see that we have this inner group. So just right before the Alembic output, let's delete all the groups. And whoops, middle click to make sure we have none. Resave your geometry. Back into Substance, here you can click to edit, reimport mesh. This will update the mesh, and the name is still here, it's in gray and it's not visible. This is basically just like a ghost. If we save this project, let's call it chocolate. Let me define a different name and save it. Now let's quickly switch to another project. So stick and back to chocolate. Oh, it's still here. Doesn't matter. Maybe it will vanish the next time we will open Substance, but this is not here anymore. So we just have one texture set. Let's call it chocolate. And on the texture set setting, let's bake the maps. So disable ID, disable thickness, 4K, use low polymesh, and bake. Now return to painting mode and let's create the chocolate material. So back on the layers tab, let's delete this one and create a new fill layer. Here let's enable only color, height and roughness. The height, the starting height should be 0, and for the color let's choose some chocolate tone. Let's say something like this. For the roughness, let's start from a very low value. It will be a very shiny chocolate at the beginning. So let's say 1, 2, something like this. Yeah. Now let's start to introduce some variation. So fill layer, right click, black mask, and here let's start to add some fill. Let's say we take this time, let's delete the filters, this cloud 2 to start off. And so let's see only the mask for a second. Of course, we want to enable the triplanar projection because here we have the seams, so triplanar. And on the cloud setting, let's maybe decrease this value and increase the disorder. So we have something like this. Now we can use this mask to drive, let's press M to go back to the material. We don't want to use it to change the color, rather the roughness and the height. So disable everything but the roughness and the height. And let's say this will bump up the height of the chocolate because otherwise it will be a perfect mesh and it's not believable. So let's say 0.08, something like this. And for the roughness, let's set it to something like, how much was 0.12. Let's make it 0.13, just a slight variation on the roughness. And maybe the height is too much, but instead of tweaking the height, let's visualize the mask and add a level to it. So here we can clamp just the lower value instead of reducing all the height range. So basically we are reducing it by here. Maybe we can lower also the gamma here. And let's go back on the cloud for a second because I want to increase the scale of the cloud itself. So let's say something to 4, but I want to decrease the tiling of the old texture, something very low value. So we will have a much larger features appear, something like 0.1. Now let's copy and paste this layer so we can apply another layer of stuff. And with this one, we can actually keep using this setup with the clouds 2 and the level. Just make sure that we change the parameters so we will not end up with the same stuff. So here let's set the tiling back to 1 and maybe increase the scale something like 7, decrease the disorder, and back here on the layer setting, let's of course decrease this height because this is way too much. We want to add at least another 0 here, so something like this. You can clearly see the difference. And also lower the roughness. Let's say this part are colder, so they will have less roughness, something like this. So let's add a final layer, copy and paste this one. And of course it's always encouraged to rename your layer, but in this case, let's close an eye. And this time, instead of the clouds 2, let's change the texture. Let's use this clouds 1. And let's preview the mask. Let's hide the level for now. And on the cloud setting, let's see, maybe lower the balance a little bit so we have something like that. And we want a higher scale. Let's say 4. Now we don't want to apply some levels, but we want to apply a fill to mask some parts of this new noise, because this will be too much all over the chocolate. So we will mask some part of it. And this time let's take this B&W spot 3. So we can set this to multiply. This will cover some of the clouds below. And on this one, always set triplanar projection. Maybe lower the balance so we cover a little bit more of the noise below. And let's also increase this scale here. Maybe reduce the tiling a little bit, something like 0.5. Let's half it. So if we go on the material view, we have this difference. Let's tweak this value a little bit. So maybe the height, we want just half of it, so 0.04. And for the roughness, let's lower it back, so 1.5. And maybe we can also enable the color, make it black, so now it will cover as full black, but we can lower the opacity here, and it only affect the base color, so lower until we have just a slight color variation, something like this. And we are ready to go. We done all the texturing, so save the project, export texture, choose the right template, which is the Karma one. Now set the output path just like usual, so it's in the texture folder. Let's create a chocolate one and export your textures. Let's quickly check it, and everything seems to be fine. So back in Houdini, we want to start to bring the mesh and the texture into Karma. So we want to go at the stage level, and first let's drop down a sub create so we can create some sort of backdrop for our ice cream. So we want to create a grid. Let's make it something like 80 by 80 and 160 rows and columns. So we have a nice segmentation, because now we want to take a bend node, plug it to the grid. The direction and the length will be relative to the size of the grid. So copy the Y sides. We want to paste it on the, let's enable the visualizer for the manipulator for the tool. We want the direction to be on the Z, which is fine. The capture origin needs to be the grid sides divided by 2 in the negative axis. So something like this. And the length should be the entire size of the grid. So if we increase the angle, we have something like this. And what we want to do is, let's say, set a 20 angle for the bend, and let's also enable the twist, so we can apply something like, let's say, negative 40 degree of twist. And this is just because so we have a nice backdrop and it's not a perfectly plane surface, so we can catch some interesting light variation. So we have our backdrop. Let's drop down another sub create. this will be our stick, and we can plug it everything as a chain. So go inside the soap create. Here we need an object merge, and we want to take from the object level the stick out stick. This will be both the animated part and the old surface part, so everything is here. Now we want to go back outside, and in here, don't worry about the position, we will move this accordingly to the camera cuts, but we have our stick, and as you can see during the fractured part, the playback is quite slow. Honestly, I still didn't find a way to this kind of stuff be really fast into Karma. I believe you should use something like the Karma instancer node with the USD geometry, but I still didn't study that part, so we will do it like this. On the stick geometry, you want to go to import from SOP, and we want to enable in the import data the subset group, because we did have an inside group for the fractured part that we need to extract from the SOP create so we can assign a different material to it. And now let's drop down another SOP create. We will import the cream, so this will be cream, dive inside, object merge, and take the cream, so out cream. And actually, as we set inside at SOP level, the cream will switch to the static geometry after the animation, but we will still have it during the first part. We don't want this because the cut for the cream will start, in my case, at where is it? 240. So back on Karma, inside the SOP create, we want to switch to a null. So take a null and a switch node. Null will go into the first input and emerge in the second one. And on the switch, we want to say current frame is equal, or rather is greater than 239. So during the first part of the animation, we won't have the cream here in scene. Lastly, let's take another sub create for the chocolate. This will be chocolate. And inside, we want to grab the correct null. So obj chocolate out chocolate. And where is it? Oh yeah, it's not there at the beginning. So in this case, this is all we need. But just as for the stick, we want to import the group we defined. So they were called inner, inside, and outside. So now that we have all the geometry, let's create a material library. I don't know why I was writing texture, guess I'm tired. So dive in the material library, let's create a first Karma material builder. We will use this one for the backdrop and just duplicate it. For now, one copy. We will use this one for the stick. So let's set some color value for now, just temporarily. And for the stick, it will be brown, something like this, just to see if the material linker will work. So now click on autofill materials. This will populate the material library. Now we need a material linker. So drop down after the material library. And we want to assign the backdrop to the, we didn't rename the backdrop, so let's do it. Backdrop, this will update live. So backdrop on the backdrop and stick on the stick. As you can see, the materials has been linked. So now let's drop down a dome light, and I will choose some HDRI. Let's see, something like this, veranda.exr. And Basically, now let's move this backdrop out of the way. Temporarily, just do it like this. We want to check some texture. So let's go on the stick material in here, and we want some MTLX image node. So drop down one, and let's start to take our texture. So job and text folder, this is the stick one. We want the color and plug it to the base color. And it seems to be working. Let's duplicate it. We want to take the roughness, so this one. This will go in the specular roughness parameter. And then the normal map, we need another node. We need this MTLX normal map node. This will go into this geometry subfolder. Here we have the normal input, so plug it to the MTLX normal map node. And now we want to take another copy of this image, take the normal, and this will go in the input of the normal map node, so something like this. Let's go where the stick will be completed, and maybe we can rotate this loam light, so something like this. And now let's add a karma node. Where karma node? There it is. Let's highlight it. Right now it's complaining that it hasn't a camera. Let's just create a camera for the time being to test the rendering. And here we want to switch to XPU. And let's see what we have by going into the Karma XPU tab. So it seems the material is working. Let's rotate the dome light. And it may seem it's working correctly, but it's not. And you can clearly see if we zoom out here, there's something wrong with the material. This is because inside the material, we want to go back here inside the stick, we use the same node, the MTLX image, but as you can see here, it does a signature. For the color is fine, but for the roughness, we want to set it as a float value because it's a single channel, a gray channel. And for the normal, it's a tree channel, but it's not a color. We need to specify it as a vector tree. So now the material is actually working correctly. Now let's copy this material. This will be the stick inside. So we already have the node inside. We just need to switch the texture. So stick inside folder, inside color, inside roughness. Make sure you are in the correct folder, and the normal. So stick inside normal. Now let's duplicate this one more time for the chocolate. So this will be chocolate. Go inside, replace the texture. So chocolate color. And those are all the material with the texture we need, but we still need the material for the cream, so we will duplicate the backdrop because we don't need a texture. Let's call it cream. And just to check it, let's make it something we can clearly see, like this green value. Also duplicated because we need basically for the inside and outside part of the chocolate we do have the texture, but for the fractured inside part we just want to use a standard brownish material. So let's call this chocolate inside, and also let's make this one orange for now so we can see if it's working or not. So inside our scene, let's first check the initial part of the stick animation, and we can hide the grid so we don't see it in the render. It seems that all the textures are working properly, or maybe actually it's not. Let's see. Oh, we actually need to populate the material library with the new materials, so we still have to link those materials. So click again to autofill materials. This will populate with all the material we created, and in the material linker, now we want to say that the stick inside should be assigned to basically all the inside group, but on all the pieces. So we want to drag the stick here on the material, then we want to click on the rule. And now we want to state the new pattern. Basically will be everything which is named stick underscore everything. And as you can see, now it's taking all the pieces, but we want to take only the inside group. So slash inside. And now we are taking only the inside polygon. Apply and accept this path. And now we do have the correct direction for the texture. So let's move forward. The whole stick should be fine. Let's go to frame, let's say 230. So we do have the correct stick texture. Now let's also assign the cream material to the cream geometry, the chocolate to the chocolate, and then another special rule. So the chocolate inside material will be on all the chocolate, but let's say everything with the inside group, which is not populating. Are we taking the groups? Let's see. Oh, because we have nothing at this frame. So first let's check the cream. It should be entered something like here, and this is beautiful with this green actually. But the material is working, so let's move for, maybe let's tweak it first. I mean, this green is really nice, but let's say that it will be more something like actual cream. So just a little bit of hint of yellow, maybe. Something like this, very light in the color. And for the chocolate, let's move forward. Yeah, we still have the material correctly assigned, but now we should have that subset, and we do have. So here now we can click and backslash everything, backslash inside. Apply and accept. So the inside was the orange part, because on the outside we have the texture. So everything is working properly, but let's change this orange color. So material library, chocolate inside. Let's take some something like more a chocolate color. So let's say something like this, maybe a little bit lighter, because I don't know, it's on the inside. So this will be good enough. So I added a couple more lights here. They're just a rectangular light with some light tint on it. And now I want to branch out so we can start to render the actual different cuts of camera. And we want to reset all the transform in the backdrop. So 0, 0, 0, because now we want to branch out. So first let's scene import the cameras one by one. So this will be objects, and we will take the camera one, accept pattern, and we need multiples of this karma render settings. So let's duplicate it, and this will go after the first camera, something like this. In the camera render setting, you need to change the camera which is pointing. So open the drop down and choose the correct camera. Now, if we put ourselves, let's say, at frame 60, where this first camera cut should be, let's go in the camera view here, cam01. Basically, we want to move the backdrop for each cut in some position that we may use. So we want to drop down a transform node, and here we want to say that this transform should move only the backdrop. So On the primitive parameter, let's delete everything and write backslash, and you can see all the objects on this stage are here. We want to take the backdrop and the mesh 0, which is the default name. So accept. And now if we go out of the camera, let's set this to -100. You can see that only the backdrop is moving. So let's place it somewhere we can see it from our camera angle. And that's too small by default, so back in the soft create, let's increase the scale. So this scaling will act on all the future instance of this backdrop. So if we go in the cam 1, I placed my backdrop like this for this first cut, and would say I'm pretty happy about it. So if we take a test render, we do have something like this. And for the other cards, now we are going to change also the lighting. But first, let's set everything we need to set on this single chain so we can duplicate it and change only we need to change. So on this first node, let's rename it to camera 01 1 200. This will be renamed to cut 01, just to keep things clean. And on the camera node, I will think we don't have to change nothing. On the karma render setting, let's increase the resolution to our final one, which should be at least a full HD, so 9020 by 1080. We want to also increase the path reset sample to something like 512. And we also want to enable the optics denoiser, at least I want to do it. And now we want to create some AOV for compositing. So we want to go on the AOV tab, and here we just need to enable what we want. So let's say direct diffuse and indirect diffuse, and scroll down to the reflection and refraction tab, and let's also have the direct and indirect glossy refraction. I believe that should be it, except we also want the cryptomatte. And for the cryptomatte, we actually need to add an extra render bar. So click on this plus icon. Here we want to choose where it is, cryptomatte, maybe at the bottom. Yeah, cryptomatte, and we want to use this one, the material name. This will by default populate the material in a correct way. So now we want to click here where it says snapshot strip, and we want to save a snapshot. Now let's pause the render, and if we go in the composite view, where is my snapshot? Let's click on this one. This will bring up the Solaris render gallery. So now here you can see that we have the combined pass. We have the crypto material that we can use to, composite single object based, in this case, on the material name. Then we have the direct diffuse and all the other paths we created. And as you can see, the single paths are not denoised, even if we specify to use the optics denoise. And this is basically a gotcha that made me lost an entire night of render, because you need to go back on the filter tab, and here you need to specify which pass you want the denoise. And here we want to apply the denoise also on the single pass, not the crypto one. I don't believe that one is needed, but the diffuse and the reflection, we want to denoise those one. So now if we take another render, so restart render, let's delete this old snapshot and let's save another one, pause the render, double click on the snapshot, and now if we go on the single pass, you can see that the denoise is happening also on the single passes. So finally, let's apply some motion blur because we calculated the velocity. So on the rendering tab here on the camera effect, we want to disable the depth of field. We're just going to use the motion blur. And as you can see, we are getting none for the time being because basically this motion blur, which is enabled by default, it works on object transform, but our motion blur should be calculated based on the piece velocity. So here we want to say velocity blur. And if we computed the velocity correctly, we should have some motion blur. And it doesn't seem to have any. Let's see if we are getting the velocity on the pieces. Here we should have some velocity value, and we haven't. So let's go back at obj level and see what's happening. Here we do have the velocity, so I guess it's just a matter of transferring here in the unpack node. So transfer attribute velocity. And maybe also transfer the normal, I don't know, try. So go back on the stage level, scene view, and let's see. Let's hide this visualizer so we don't see the geometry highlight, and we are getting some motion blur now. So let's quickly check if we are transferring also the velocity on the cream mesh. Here is moving, we should have velocity, and it seems we do. And for the chocolate, let's see, frame it somewhere like here, and we do have velocity, but it's 0. Let's go check the chocolate. Where is the animation? Oh, here we should need to calculate some point velocity, because these are the point with the animation. So now, as for the stick, let's drop down a point velocity. Compute from deformation will be fine, and now we should have velocity all the way here. We are transferring, but we didn't have any. So here on the correct frame, now we do have velocity, and this should fix the motion blur for all the cuts. Finally, we want to set the output path for this file, so I want to save it in my job variable in the subfolder render, and it will take a subfolder with this node name, so it will be cat01, and the file will be named cat01 dot $f4 dot exr. Middle click, we should have the correct output path. And finally here we want to set the frame range, so this will be a specific frame range, and in this case let's delete the channels, and it will be from 1 to 100. So now to prepare the other cut, let's delete all this stuff because we don't need it anymore, and we want to duplicate all of this. This will handle the second camera, so here let's pick the correct camera, which is from 130 and 180, so let's also rename it 02 130 180. The cut has been renamed by itself, but here we want to change the camera also, so camera 2, and rather here also. So from the list come 02. And for the other setting, everything will be fine, but we want to change both the backdrop position with this transform, which now will act only on this branch, and also we want to change the lighting setup a little bit. So let's go and see from the camera 2 and restart the render. So now we do have something. Why we do have the cream? The cream shouldn't be there at this time. Oh, because we are displaying the wrong node. Let's set a null here and call it out trim just for good measure. So now here shouldn't be visible, and let's go to 130. From the camera 2 we should have the correct camera position, and we are getting some weird normal effect. Let's pin this viewport so we will display only always the stage render. Go back to OBJ. I might have an idea on the cause of this problem. Probably we don't want to transfer the normal here. This should update the render straight away, and yes, that was the problem. So now let's move the position of the backdrop. So I moved the backdrop something like down there so I can see it clearly from my camera, and I want to tweak the light. So going into the camera now, I don't want to change this lighting right here. Those are fine for the first cut, but now let's take a light mixer, which should be, let's look for mixer, there it is, and place it, let's say, after the transform of the backdrop. So basically what we can do now, let me pause the render for a second and go to the Houdini viewport. Basically now a light mixer has been created, and while we are on this tool, we can actually edit all the light. So we want to take the 3 lights and drag it here on the right side. This will add the light to the light mixer, and now you have all the controls you want to edit this light only on this branch. And one very cool feature you can choose like specular and diffuse. Let's say specular. We want to take the light number 1, and we just need to click where we want the light to shine. So let's say right here. As you can see, an interactive handle will appear, and it will move the light based on the surface you're hitting right now with the mouse. So if we go on the render again and restart it, of course, you can see that the lighting has changed on the stake. So basically with a light mixer you can edit all the light you want. You have also the slider control for the color, the temperature. You can move it, of course, just like we did, but you can actually add new lights. If you click on this icon here, you can insert any light you want in the scene, and as you can see, a subnet with the new lights has been created here, and those new lights will be relative only to this branch, will be relative only to this light mixer. So let me delete this one, I don't want it. And now I will quickly move forward and show you my final setup. And basically this is my final setup. I just duplicated a bunch of time for all the cuts. I added a line mixer and a transform for the backdrop, so for each camera cut I have the correct position. And the only thing I added is a transform on the final cut. So let's quickly go on the camera 5. This was around here. Let's restore the render. Basically what I did up here, after the transform for the backdrop, I applied a 180 rotation to the stick because the logo was facing the wrong direction, but everything else is just what I show you. So now you can render the cuts one by one, or if you select all the render nodes you want to render and click on render, this will create a queue. Actually, if you select it one by one, there will be a render order. The last node selected will be the first that's been rendered. So let's say if you want to create a ordered render queue, start from selecting from the last one and then go to the first one. Now if you click render to disk, it will render all the cuts starting from the first. And this is my final compositing. We won't go through the compositing setup. I'm not a compositing guy. This is super basic stuff, but I wanted to show you that the XR sequence we created Uh, it perfectly reads all the single IOV, and it also reads, at least in Nuke, the cryptomat we created. I'm not sure if you are working with something like After Effects, if this will work, but if you're using some decent compositing software, I'm pretty sure the crypto material pass will work in some way. The way it works in Nuke, I just want a cryptomat node. I will plug this to the cryptomat pass. And here, as you can see, I have different shades of color. So if I control and click something, that cryptomat ID will be added to the node. And I can use it as a mask, basically. So as you can see, here I'm tweaking slightly the backdrop color. And this is it, basically. I just composite the single pass and then I merge it into After Effects with some more color correction. But this is pretty much my compositing workflow. And this concludes this video and actually the entire project. I really hope you found this content useful. If you did, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. And also any feedback is appreciated in the comment section. So I hope to see you in the next training, which hopefully will include also some of Unreal Engine. So see you in the next one. Cheers.